To my wedding day, my parents said, "We're not going to your stupid wedding." Then they headed off to my sister's graduation, so I took spectacular revenge. I'm Olivia, and this is the story of how my family's perfect image finally shattered, starting with an empty front row at what should have been the happiest day of my life. Growing up, the dynamic in our house was clear. My younger sister Kate was the star, and I was the supporting cast. Every achievement of hers was celebrated like a national holiday, while mine were treated as expected. Background noise. Kate gets an A in math. Time for a special dinner. I make valedictorian. Good job, honey. Did you hear Kate made the junior varsity tennis team? Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. Kate's never been deliberately cruel or dismissive. She just grew up in a different reality than I did. One where her every move was applauded and photographed, while I learned to celebrate my victories quietly by myself. Maybe that's why I went into event planning. There's something satisfying about creating perfect moments for other people, even if my own life was full of overlooked milestones. By 28, I'd built a successful business planning everything from corporate galas to destination weddings. My parents barely noticed. Too busy following Kate's journey of self-discovery through 3 different college majors. Then I met Daniel. He came to me as a client needing help planning a charity gala for his pediatric medical practice. I remember the first time we met. He was flustered, running late after an emergency surgery, his tie slightly crooked. "I'm so sorry," he said, rushing into my office. Tiny humans don't stick to schedules. Something about his genuine warmth, the way he immediately put me at ease, felt different from anyone I'd ever met. By the end of our first planning meeting, we'd spent more time talking about our lives than the gala. He asked about my family, and I found myself sharing things I usually kept hidden. "It sounds lonely," he said softly when I described growing up in Kate's shadow. Being the responsible one, the one who's expected to understand. No one had ever put it into words quite like that before. Our professional relationship quickly turned personal. Within 6 months, we were dating. Within a year, we were living together. Daniel saw me, really saw me in a way my family never had. He celebrated my successes, supported my dreams, and most importantly, made me feel like I mattered. When he proposed, it was perfect in its simplicity. No grand gestures or elaborate schemes, though I'd planned enough of those for clients. Just a quiet evening at home after I'd had a particularly stressful day with a Bridezilla client. "You know what I was thinking," he said as we sat on our balcony sharing takeout. "You spend so much time making other people's special moments perfect. Maybe it's time someone did that for you." He pulled out a ring. His grandmother's vintage sapphire reset in a modern setting, before he could even finish his speech. I was saying yes through happy tears. The next day, I called my parents to share the news. Mom answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," she said in the same tone she used when I told her about my business success. "But listen, can I call you back? Kate just got some exciting news too. She's finally decided to graduate." My sister, at 25, had spent 7 years in college changing majors, like most people change clothes. Apparently, she finally accumulated enough credits in various subjects to qualify for a degree. "That's great, Mom," I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "But about the wedding, we'll talk soon, sweetie. Kate needs help planning her graduation party. It's such a big achievement for her. You know how much she struggled to find her path." I hung up feeling deflated. Daniel found me staring at my phone. "They don't deserve you," he said, simply pulling me into a hug. I threw myself into wedding planning, determined to create the perfect day. As one of the top event planners in the city, I had access to the best vendors, the most beautiful venues. We chose a date in late May, a Saturday, when the weather would be perfect for our garden ceremony, May 20th. I told my parents over dinner 6 months before the wedding. "I've already sent you the save the dates." Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Oh no." What I looked between them, a familiar sense of dread building in my stomach. "That's Kate's graduation weekend." Dad said she's finally getting her degree, and the ceremony is that Saturday morning, but the wedding's at 4 p.m., I stammered. You could do both, honey. Mom cut in using her be reasonable voice. The graduation is in Boston. We need to be there to help Kate attend the ceremony. And of course there's the celebration after. We can't possibly make it back in time. Then come to the wedding instead. I said, hating how small my voice sounded. It's my wedding day. Dad shook his head. This is a huge moment for Kate. She's worked so hard for this. You understand, don't you? You're so good at handling things on your own. There it was, the familiar refrain. Good, responsible Olivia, who always understands, who never makes waves, who plans everyone else's perfect moments while her own fade into the background. Can't Kate walk in a different ceremony? I asked. Most universities have multiple graduation dates. We can't ask her to do that, Mom said firmly. This is her moment. She's so excited about graduating with her friends, and you know how she struggles with change. I looked at Kate, who was staring at her plate unusually quiet. What do you think, Kate? I asked directly. She glanced up, then quickly looked away. I mean, I've worked really hard for this, and I cut her off, the words sharper than I intended. I haven't worked hard building my business, creating a life, finding someone who loves me. That's different, Mom said dismissively. You've always been the capable one. Kate needs us there for support. I stood up my chair, scraping against the floor. And I don't. It's my wedding day. Be reasonable. Olivia. Dad sighed. There will be plenty of people at your wedding. Kate's graduation is more important right now. More important. The words hung in the air like poison. I left dinner early that night, driving home through tears. Daniel was waiting up, and one look at my face told him everything. They're not coming, are they? I shook my head, collapsing into his arms. Then we'll make it so spectacular. They'll regret missing it for the rest of their lives, he said firmly. Looking up at him, I felt something shift inside me. All my life, I'd accepted being second best, being the one who understood, who gave way, who compromised. But not this time. Not my wedding day. Yes, I said slowly, a plan already forming in my mind. Yes, we will. What my family didn't know was that being the city's top event planner meant I had connections. Lots of them. And I was about to use every single one to create an event they'd never forget. Missing, they thought Kate's graduation was more important. Fine, I'd show them exactly what they were choosing to pass up. The morning after that disastrous dinner, I sat in my office staring at my extensive contact list. Years of planning. Other people's perfect moments had earned me favors with the best vendors in the business. Now it was time to call them in. First call, Marco, the city's most sought-after florist darling. He answered on the first ring. Tell me you're not canceling next month's Henderson wedding. Actually, Marco, this is about my wedding. There was a pause. Your wedding, the one you're planning yourself. Olivia. Me, I'm sorry. I thought we talked about this. You know the saying about doctors making the worst patients. Things have changed, I said. My voice steady. My parents won't be attending. They're choosing my sister's college graduation instead. The silence on the other end was deafening. Marco had done the flowers for my sister's last 3 graduation parties. The one celebrating her switching majors. Those bastards, he finally breathed. What do you need? Everything. I want people to walk in and forget how to breathe. I could practically hear him rubbing his hands together. The garden concept we discussed, but elevated crystal draped trees, floating flowers, illuminated pathways will make the Queen of England's wedding look like a backyard barbecue. Next on my list, Philippe, the French pastry chef, who normally had a 3-year waiting list. Marjorie, he cooed when I explained the situation. Say no more. I will create something so spectacular. Your parents will weep when they see the photos. 6 years minimum, hand-painted sugar, flowers, gold leaf, the works, and for the groom's cake. Daniel loves astronomy, you said. I offered perfect a galaxy theme in dark chocolate and mirror glaze. The stars will actually twinkle, I promise you. One by one, I contacted every top vendor I knew. Charlotte, the lighting designer who'd worked on Olympic ceremonies. Jen, the photographer who shot for Vogue. Eduardo, the cocktail genius known for his molecular gastronomy creations. Each one listened to my story, and each one promised to outdo themselves. No budget constraints. I told them all. I've been saving for this my whole life. It was true. While my parents poured money into Kate's ever-changing college career, I'd been quietly building my nest egg. Now it would all go toward creating something unforgettable. When Daniel came home that evening, he found me surrounded by mood boards and sample books. Should I be worried? He asked, only half joking. I showed him Felipe's cake design. His eyes widened at the rotating galaxy tier. Okay, that's amazing. But Liv, you don't have to do all this just because of them. I'm not, I said, realizing as I spoke that it was true. I'm doing it for us. For once in my life, I'm going to create my own perfect moment, not someone else's. He kissed my forehead. As long as you still show up to marry me, the rest is just details. But the details were everything. Over the next few months, I threw myself into planning with an intensity that surprised even me. The garden venue was transformed into an ethereal wonderland. Marco's team created a canopy of crystal-draped cherry blossom trees that would light up as the sun set. Charlotte designed a lighting system that would make the entire garden seem to glow from within. The invitations alone were works of art hand calligraphy on handmade paper with pressed flowers and gold leaf accents. I sent my parents' invitation via registered mail requiring a signature. They needed to actively choose to reject it. When it came back with my mother's signature, I filed it away, carefully evidence of their choice. The RSVP started pouring in. My vendor friends' appreciation for the situation had spread through the industry grapevine, and suddenly everyone wanted to be part of this wedding. Celebrity photographers offered to second shoot for Jen award-winning musicians asked to perform at the ceremony. My mother called occasionally, always with the same message. I hope you understand why we can't be there. Kate needs us. Each time I responded with detailed updates about the wedding plans. The hand-painted dance floor is being installed next week. The vintage champagne is being flown in from France. The string quartet that plays for the royal family is learning Daniel's favorite song. I could hear her hesitation growing with each call. Then came the society page coverage. One of my regular clients was a magazine editor, and she was determined to document every aspect of the planning process. Modern Cinderella plans her own fairy tale. Read the first headline. Photos of the preparations appeared weekly. The custom-designed bridesmaids' dresses, the hand-forged ceremony arch. The preview of Felipe's spectacular cake. Did you see this week's article? I asked Mom during one of her calls. They're comparing it to Grace Kelly's wedding. Isn't that amazing, Olivia? She said slowly. Don't you think this is getting a bit excessive? Oh no, I replied sweetly. This is just the beginning. 3 weeks before the wedding, Kate called. She'd never been one for confrontation, preferring to let our parents fight her battles. So this was unexpected. Liv, she said, her voice small. I saw the magazine coverage. It looks incredible. Thank you. I talked to my advisor. There's another graduation ceremony in July. I could switch. Don't bother. I cut her off. It's too late. The plans are set. Mom and Dad feel terrible? No, they don't. They feel uncomfortable because people are talking, because for once they can't control the narrative about our perfect family. She was quiet for a moment. I never meant to always come first, but you did, and you let it happen, and now you all get to live with that choice. The week before the wedding, my phone was flooded with messages from relatives and family friends, all variations on the same theme. How can you go through with this without your parents there? Can't you postpone it? Family should come first. I forwarded them all to a special folder labeled for later. Daniel found me in my office reviewing the final timing schedule. You okay? I looked up at him, at his kind face and worried eyes. You know what I really am. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to make everyone else happy. I'm not being the understanding one, the responsible one, the one who gives way. I'm just being me." He smiled. "That's who I fell in love with. You know, not the perfect event planner, not the dutiful daughter, just you." 2 days before the wedding, the final piece of my plan fell into place. My friend at the magazine called to confirm the coverage details. Full spread, top photographers, immediate online release with hourly social media updates. "The whole city will be watching this unfold in real time," she promised. "Perfect," I said, thinking of my mother's habit of obsessively checking social media. "Make sure you get lots of shots of the empty seats in the front row the day before the wedding." I received a text from my father. It's not too late to change the date. I sent back a photo of the garden setup. The thousands of twinkling lights, the crystal trees, the floating candles in the reflection pool. "You're right," I wrote. "It's not too late for you to change your minds, but it is too late to save your perfect family image." He didn't respond that night at the rehearsal dinner. Daniel's parents gave a beautiful speech about welcoming me to their family. I didn't cry until his mother hugged me and whispered, "We'll be in the front row tomorrow. Honey will be there." Back in our apartment, I found Daniel adding something to his vows. "Spoiler alert," he grinned. "I may have included a line about choosing you first every day, no matter what." I fell in love with him all over again in that moment. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and perfect as I sat in the bridal suite surrounded by my closest friends and Daniel's family. My phone buzzed with a final text from my mother. "The graduation ceremony starts in an hour. We really wish we could be there too." I looked at myself in the mirror, already in my hand-beaded gown, my hair and makeup perfect, and typed back 3 words. "No, you don't." Then I turned off my phone. It was time for my moment, and I wasn't going to let them dim it anymore. As I stood at the entrance to the garden, waiting for my cue to walk down the aisle, I was stunned by how everything had come together. Marco's crystal-draped trees sparkled in the late afternoon sun, their branches heavy with thousands of white orchids and roses. The pathway before me was lined with illuminated glass orbs that seemed to float just above the ground, creating a river of light leading to the altar. Daniel's father appeared at my side, looking dashing in his tuxedo. After my parents made their choice, he had quietly offered to walk me down the aisle. "Every bride deserves someone by her side for that walk," he said. "Ready, sweetheart?" he asked now, offering his arm. I took one last look at the empty seats in the front row, the seats that should have held my family. Someone had placed a single white rose on each chair, making their absence even more striking. "Perfect," I said. "Ready." The string quartet began playing their custom arrangement of 1,000 Years. Not the typical wedding version, but a haunting, ethereal adaptation that filled the garden like a spell. As we appeared at the end of the aisle, 400 guests rose to their feet, gasping audibly at the sight. I had chosen a dress that would photograph spectacularly a custom-designed masterpiece with a bodice covered in hand-sewn crystals that caught the light with every movement, creating the illusion that I was wrapped in starlight. The cathedral-length veil edged with delicate lace that had taken artisans 3 months to create floated behind me like a cloud. But it was Daniel's face that made me catch my breath. He stood at the altar, tears streaming unashamedly down his cheeks, looking at me like I was every star in the sky. In that moment, I forgot about my parents, empty seats, forgot about revenge and perfect moments and society, page coverage. All I could see was him. The ceremony was everything we planned and more as we exchanged our vows under an arch of floating candles and cascading flowers. Charlotte's lighting design shifted suddenly, bathing us in a warm golden glow that made everything feel dreamlike. Jen's cameras clicked constantly, capturing every perfect detail. "I choose you," Daniel said in his vows, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed garden. "I choose you first every day, above all others. I choose you when it's easy and when it's hard. I choose you when the whole world tells us we're wrong. I choose you, Olivia, forever." I saw his mother dabbed her eyes in the front row right where she promised she'd be. The reception was a masterpiece of timing and spectacle. As the sun set, thousands of tiny lights hidden throughout the garden began to twinkle on, transforming the space into an enchanted forest. Cake was unveiled to audible gasps, 6 tiers of hand-painted sugar flowers, and gold leaf with that magical rotating galaxy tier that actually seemed to contain its own universe. Eduardo's signature cocktails changed color as they were poured, each one telling its own story. The dance floor, hand-painted with a design that echoed the stars in my dress, lit up in patterns that followed the dancers' movements. Every detail was captured, photographed, documented, and immediately shared across social media platforms. I knew my mother would be obsessively checking her phone during Kate's graduation celebration. I imagined her watching the spectacle unfold in real time, seeing what she had chosen to miss. The magazine's social media team was doing an exceptional job, posting stunning photo after stunning photo, each one more magical than the last at midnight. Just as the party was hitting its peak, my phone buzzed with a text from Kate. "Mom's been crying for hours. The graduation party is ruined. This isn't what I wanted." I handed the phone to Daniel without reading her message. "Deal with this for me." He nodded, tucking the phone away. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let them intrude on it anymore. The next morning, as Daniel and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, the magazine's coverage was already going viral. Wedding of the century. The headlines proclaimed event planners' dream wedding sets new standards. Photos of the empty front row chairs with their solitary roses were featured prominently with captions that told the story of parents who chose to skip the most spectacular wedding the city had ever seen for a college graduation. The society pages were brutal in their commentary. In an era where family values are supposedly paramount, one columnist wrote, "What does it say when parents choose to miss this once-in-a-lifetime celebration? One can only imagine the regret they must feel watching these incredible images from afar." My parents' social circle was merciless. Their phones were flooded with messages from friends and acquaintances, all expressing variations of shocked disbelief. "How could you miss this? What were you thinking? Your own daughter's wedding." Their carefully cultivated image of the perfect family was shattered. No one wanted to hear about Kate's graduation. Not when they could talk about the wedding that looked like it came straight from a fairy tale. The wedding her own parents chose to miss. My mother tried calling repeatedly as Daniel and I boarded our flight to Bali. I let each call go to voicemail, saving them in that special folder labeled for later. "Olivia, please," she begged in one message. "We made a terrible mistake. We should have been there. Please call us." "The photos are incredible," Kate said in her message. "I should have switched ceremonies. I'm so sorry." "We didn't realize." Dad's voice cracked in his message. "We didn't know it'd be like this." But that was the point, wasn't it? They never realized. Never knew. Never saw me. They'd spent so many years looking past me. Choosing Kate, assuming I would understand and accept and give way. They never imagined I could create something so spectacular, something they'd regret missing for the rest of their lives. 2 weeks later, lounging on a beach in Bali, I finally read all their messages. There were hundreds of them, each one more desperate than the last. The full impact of what they'd missed was hitting them hard. "Should we invite them to the reception we're having when we get back?" Daniel asked, watching me scroll through the messages. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, they made their choice. Now they get to live with it. "You're not worried about burning bridges?" "They burned the bridge," I said quietly. I just showed them what was on the other side. 6 months later, I won Event Planner of the Year for my own wedding. The photos were featured in every major wedding magazine, each one highlighting the stunning details, the magical atmosphere. And yes, those empty seats in the front row. My parents tried to make amends. They sent gifts, letters, tearful voicemails. Kate switched to part-time studies and moved back home, her own perfect daughter image tarnished by the backlash. Their social life became awkward. every event a reminder of the wedding they chose to miss. You could forgive them. Daniel suggested one night, watching me delete another series of apologetic texts. I agreed. But you know what? I don't want to. For once in my life, I'm not being the understanding one. I'm not smoothing things over or making excuses for them. They chose Kate's 5th graduation over my wedding. They can live with that choice forever. A year after our wedding, I received a call from a prestigious client who had seen my wedding photos. I want exactly that, she said. That level of magic, that attention to detail. Money is no object. As I began planning her event, I realized something. My wedding hadn't just been about revenge. It had been about finally stepping into my own light, about creating something spectacular without dimming it to make others comfortable. It had been about choosing myself just as Daniel chooses me every day. My parents still try to reach out occasionally. Last week, Mom left a message about how they're ready to move forward as a family. I saved it in my special folder with all the others, a reminder of the day they thought my wedding was skippable and how spectacular or wrong they were. Some people say I'm being too harsh. That family deserves forgiveness. Maybe they're right. But as I look through our wedding albums, at the pure joy on our faces, at the magic we created, at the empty chairs that tell their own story, I know I made the right choice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about showing them exactly what they chose to miss. And sometimes the most perfect moment comes not from being chosen, but from choosing yourself. My story ends here. Thank you for listening to me. Story 2. My son murmured, "I don't think any sound will ever haunt me more than the quiet way." Why doesn't Grandpa like me, Mommy? He was seated on the rear veranda, wearing the small red jacket he cherished, the one with the ripped sleeve knees drawn up to his chest. His face was pale, his lip was quivering, and he hadn't touched his plate, all of which I hadn't had time to sew. It didn't have much on it. I gazed at the tray, then at him. One stale piece of bread, a hard-boiled egg chilled, no water. For 2 weeks, we were residing with my folks. Only 2. I had no other options because my lease had finished early and the new location wasn't ready. It will be all right, I assured myself. It was bearable short-term. However, I neglected that what I considered tolerable meant that my son was barely living. Please leave a comment letting us know where you are viewing this video and subscribe to our channel. Neither of my parents was a monster. They were worse. They were subdued and under control. They turned civility into a weapon. They always made sure you knew where you were, but they never screamed. Something like, "You'll never be enough, but at least be useful," was something I heard growing up. Kids should feel thankful, not at ease. Avoid being theatrical. All we're doing is making you tougher. They didn't say anything aloud when I became pregnant at a young age and decided to raise my kid without consulting his father. However, every gesture, remark, and sigh all pointed to the same thing. "You failed once more, huh?" It began on the first day. My mom was already using the tight, irate circles to wipe the counters when we arrived at their house with our suitcases. She treated my son as though he were a pool of water. She needed to move around. My dad said, "Your room is upstairs," with a hardly noticeable nod. Expect little. Perhaps they simply needed time, I reasoned. They didn't. They had prepared their own breakfast when I arrived downstairs the following morning. Orange juice toast, scrambled eggs, and left nothing for us. Mom shrugged when I asked. "We assumed you would look after yourselves." Jamie, my kid, was 5 years old. He couldn't figure out why he wasn't given a plate. I handed him my purse's apple. My father was standing near the refrigerator later that day. Crossed arms. Jamie was attempting to open it. "Where are you heading, in your opinion?" my father said. Jamie stopped. "I only intended to get yogurt. Do you think this is a free place to grow food?" He lost his temper. He's simply hungry. I intervened and said. After glancing at me, my father remarked, "Teach him how hunger works. Let him find a dumpster if he wants to eat." I blinked. "What?" He said it again. "Look for a dumpster." My mother then burst out laughing. She laughed quietly and icily, like if she were watching a sitcom rather than loudly. Jamie didn't weep. He simply took a step back, folded his hands in his lap, and sat on the floor. I took a while to react. I have no idea why. Perhaps because I was shocked. Perhaps because I had lived my entire life trying to convince myself that things weren't all that horrible, that they simply did it that way. However, Jamie asked me that evening, "Why is Grandpa not fond of me?" I felt everything break inside of me. I refrained from screaming. I didn't leave all at once. I deliberated, waited, and chose precisely what I would discard first. The following morning, I left before anybody else was finished making Jamie toast, packing our luggage, wrapping him in blanket, and giving him his favorite cereal bar, despite the fact that it was my last one. After that, I went through every room in the home and tossed everything out. Methodically, not in a fit of wrath or destruction. They refused to share the fruit. Lost. They once forbade Jamie from touching the ancient blankets on the couch for fear that he might destroy them. I gave them all of the files I had arranged 2 nights prior, tore up the old pictures of me on the wall in the hallway. They tore up the ones where I was grinning but had bruises on my arms that they believed no one could notice. I kept their valuables safe. Their furnishings was not touched by me. However, I had given that house everything I ever had. Silence, work, and love. I took it out. After that, I grabbed Jamie's hand and left the room. I didn't bid them farewell. I didn't even shut the door after myself. Since the house was never open to you in the first place, why would you close it? We slept in my car outside a motel 2 days later. It wasn't glitzy. Not only that, but was cold. But we owned it. I had sold some items that were in storage, items that were memoryless. I managed to eke out a week at a low-cost extended stay. The kitchenette has stains on it. Despite the thin sheets, Jamie grinned at seeing the tiny refrigerator. He pointed to a plastic-wrapped muffin I had purchased from the gas station and said, "Mommy, is that for me?" Like he was afraid the answer may still be no. He inquired. I suppressed my emotions and nodded. "Yours alone, sweetie." I realized then that it had nothing to do with punishing my parents. Cutting the umbilical cord they put around my throat and referred to as a family was the goal. It was about making sure my son never had to bear that burden again. I never contacted them. Not once, not to elaborate, not to argue, not even 3 days later when my mother texted me. "If nothing else, let us know where you put Dad's pension forms. They were being arranged by you." Then another. "I owned the sewing machine you took. Even though I hadn't taken anything, it felt ironic that they believed I had taken something insignificant after everything they had emotionally drained from me." I remembered that file, his pension documents, but I didn't respond. I refused to accept it. I did spill coffee on it when I left it behind. I didn't remove it, but I also didn't do it purposefully. A week went by. A woman named Krista, a buddy from my early years, called me. She stated that they needed assistance with administrative tasks, snack preparation, and weekend coverage at a nearby after-school center. I accepted the position with the minimum wage, short hours, and honest labor. Jamie was liked by the children. They gave him human treatment. Not trash, not a visitor, not a burden. He blossomed. I located the small basement apartment. 1 window, 2 towns. The faucet is rusted. But we established a pattern. Jamie learned how to scramble eggs from me. I learned how to fold a paper swan from him. It was everything I had never had, even though it wasn't much. I listened to Kristen's stories as they came in. Just facts, no rumors. To turn in his paperwork, my dad had gone to his retirement financial planner. He was informed that the copies were not complete. He had to rewrite the forms because of the missing stains on the signature, but the original copies were lost for some reason. That wasn't something I had planned, but I also didn't regret it. He was required to personally visit the county office and refile everything. He didn't know how, though, since I had been filling out the applications for 30 years. The appointment was scheduled by me. My mother had been calling me a freeloader under her breath when I had written the checks. The home was being held up like scaffolding by me. They had to do everything by themselves now. They had persuaded me of my worthlessness for their entire lives. They were now able to experience life without me. I ran across my mom at a corner store a month later. At first, she didn't recognize me. I had my hair tied back. I wore a coat that I borrowed. Jamie was by my side, but I was carrying a bag of cheap groceries. Tall, self-assured, and in good health. Her face twitched at the sight of him. She took a step forward as if to speak or perhaps to show concern. Then Jamie came up behind me, dropped her hand, and didn't even look at her or say anything. She said, "You look different." I simply grinned. Her mouth parted and then closed as I finally ate. As I passed her and made my cash payment, she stood motionless in the doorway. The same money they told I would never make. A year has passed with 12 peaceful months of development, healing, and calm. Jamie didn't hear much about my parents from me. I didn't volunteer and he didn't ask. Every time I cooked quick pancakes, he called me Chef Mommy and spent his time learning the alphabet and catching grasshoppers in the neighborhood park. Although we didn't have much, I had at last created a house where love wasn't rationed like oxygen, where food didn't feel like a luxury, and where stillness didn't feel like a threat. I then received a call from an unidentified number one afternoon. I nearly disregarded it, but I felt compelled to respond. "Hello," a rigid voice said. Is this my dad? Erica?" His breath sounded hollow to me, as if he had practiced the call, but was still unsure of how to complete it. I remained silent. That gave him the go-ahead to continue. "Would you kindly subscribe to our channel and let us know where you are viewing this video? Your mother fell last week and I thought you would want to know. Broke her hip. He faded off and I've been trying to sort this out. We're not as young as we once were, you know." It was there, the wording's subtle hook and angle. He wasn't phoning to say sorry. They needed something, which is why he was calling. His voice tightened as he went on. "I don't know how to file her medical insurance. You've always taken care of that. Perhaps you might stop over and lend a hand if you had a few minutes." I ended the call. Not anger, not fear, nor tears. A single, fluid click. I put down the phone and looked at the wall for a while. Jamie and I sat on the floor that night while we opened a package beneath the bed. It contained documents, letters, and pictures that I hadn't seen in more than a year. I selected one picture in particular. 7-year-old me wearing an apron, pouring soup into 3 bowls while standing near the kitchen table. Not one of them is mine. My dad wrote the caption, "Our little helper, finally earning her keep." I threw it in the garbage. Jamie took a quick look. "Was that you?" I gave a nod. "That image bothers me." "I don't either." I carried a clean envelope to the bus stop the following morning. I didn't use attorneys to exact retribution. I didn't go to court with them. I didn't arrive with a confrontation or a camera. Rather, I deposited a single envelope containing a printed list through the mail slot on their front door. I had paid the rent for each item without any items. I was informed that I owed grocery costs. Hours spent providing care were recorded while my brother played video games. The $250 I lent them from my college refund check, the supper my dad flung across the room because I used the good plate, and the night I skipped prom because my mother needed the bathroom to herself. My spine was bruised when they struck me with the belt. "Serve him, for he is your brother," I typed at the bottom. "This represents your entire balance. Paid in full. Don't get in touch with me again. Nothing more." I know they opened it, but I never received a response. I am aware of this because 2 weeks later, Krista called to report that she had witnessed my mother hobbling through the pharmacy by herself while straining to open the door. Nobody came to her aid, as well as my dad. With a scrawled notepad in hand, he arrived at the community financial office and begged the clerk to assist me identify the paperwork my daughter used to complete. "He appeared to be a ghost," she remarked. "Jamie turns 8 today. When he finishes reading a chapter book by himself, he puts the leftovers in the refrigerator and remarks, 'We save food in this house, right?' 'Yes,' I tell him, as we are aware of its value. Grandpa told him to eat from a dumpster that day, but I remember it. He doesn't. We cook in the kitchen, which is now devoid of everything from my previous home. Not even a crumb, not a plate, not a spoon. I tossed it all out.